This is Confabulous. Confabulous!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Confabulous. And today is a little different because I will be confabulating. No, I will be having a confab with myself for this episode. Kasi syempre, para diverse naman tayo dito. I don't have to always be talking to somebody. So today, I will be talking to myself. Kayo ang kausap ko. Hindi naman myself pala. Kayo pala ang kausap ko today. That's fine. That's totally fine. No, I'm really excited to talk about some topics today just because it's gonna be like a pop culture rundown. Kasi napansin ko na ang daming nangyayaring Filipino pop culture shenanigans na pwede nating pag-usapan dito because it's a really, as with the a lot of the conversations that I've had in the past few episodes of Confabulous, it's a really great time for Philippine content, for Philippine media here and abroad. So marami tayong nakikita talaga nga magandang kaganapan that really would highlight how great our culture is, how great we are as Filipino people. Wow! Make the Philippines great again. Ay! Charing lang. Charing, wag tayong ganon. Sa Pilipinas, yung mga nangungurakot, parang hindi pa rin nakukulong. Okay, I have to stop making faces kasi feeling ko ang pangit ko on cam. But I will pivot a little bit on a more serious note. There are very challenging things that are happening in the country. You know, political issues with corruption, but also natural calamities. So, kung kayo po have the opportunity to share a little bit of help to those who are struggling because of the back-to-back typhoons that have been happening in the country, go ahead and do that. Okay? So everybody, stay safe. So one of the news stories that really had a big impact in Philippine society, I guess, has been the whole Michelin thing. Is Michelin French? Because like if it's Michelin, then it's Michelin. Michelin! But yes, so a lot of Filipino restaurants have finally been awarded Michelin stars. Plus, there was also a Michelin guide released that features a lot of Filipino food places. And it's a very interesting list because it was made up of like food trucks and even carinderias, which is really interesting. But again, this made waves all over the Philippines because we all know that the Philippines has really great cuisine. Like it's no secret. Like when I go on YouTube, there's always a lot of international channels featuring Filipino dishes. Of course, they have their own take on it. But you know, Filipino food is really slowly starting to get a lot of attention. So this kind of recognition for restaurants to be given their stars and for certain places being part of the Michelin guide, it is a long time coming. So it's really an exciting time. But I was having a conversation about this with a lot of my friends and I told them, because like we've been doing a lot of pop culture videos here on Sisne Pop, right? And so we talk so much about Filipino music, Filipino movies and TV shows. And it's very obvious that in the global scale, Filipino content has slowly been making its mark. We're no longer in the sidelines. Now, the whole world is paying attention, which is great. And that's really what led to Michelin giving out these recognitions. But to get to this point was actually a long journey because if you think about it, for the Philippines to actually have a place in the global zeitgeist, there was a lot of things that had to happen. And I don't know if it's just me thinking about this, but it really puts into perspective a lot of things. Because I remember when I was younger, I was watching this show. I forget if this was from Nickelodeon or Disney Channel, but the episode was the character was tasked to like have a report. Well, it was like this really small subplot on the episode, but the character had to like do this report or this research on a foreign country. And this character was assigned the Philippines. And I remember one scene where they were working on like this slide presentation. And it was a photo of like a nipa hut and a man like up a tree, like climbing a tree. And that upset me because that was not the first time where the Philippines was mentioned in something. And the portrayal is that we're like these uncivilized tree dwelling savages. And the irony is I was watching this on a television with cable. And we were living like 20 minutes away from a mall. that really upset me because, like, why is it always the case? It didn't really make sense to me because the Philippines is vibrant, is modern. And so I always had that, I guess, a little bit of anger, but also hunger. So, hunger to kind of correct that. I wanted Hollywood. I wanted the music industry. I just wanted the global scene to correct that. And we're at this point where I think that corrections have been made, I guess. And one of these moments is, Filipino restaurants being recognized by Michelin. Now, the joke that I was always saying was like, we have like SB19 and Beanie and all those like P-pop music to blame for this Michelin recognition. Just because my point was that I think this whole creep of Filipino media where talents like Beanie and SB19 or even some of our movies or TV shows are getting recognition all over the world. I feel like those were like slow steps that was permeating almost every aspect of life all over the world. And that includes food. Anyway, I digress, but we did talk more about that in a deeper sense with MJ on our very first Confabulous. So do check that out. But the reason why I'm also bringing that up right now is it's a joke, right? It's a joke, but I feel like something was happening in the Philippines even before the pandemic where what we're good at as a country, I think, is weaponizing the internet. I mean, it could also be kind of our demise, but the Philippines has such a connection to the internet. We're really able to use it as this tool for soft power, if that makes sense. And I feel like that is really what is laying it out for all these pop culture moments that we'll be talking about today. So if you scroll on like TikTok right now, or maybe even IG Reels, it is a huge resource of Filipino food content. Now, I know I'm Filipino, I'm from the Philippines, so my algorithm goes that direction. But what I notice is that a lot of people online, even creators, are incredibly curious about Filipino cuisine. And a lot of them always mention that why isn't Philippine cuisine on the same caliber as Japanese food or Korean food or even Thai food? And so there's this curiosity. And then when you put that against how Filipinos are very aggressive when it comes to the internet, I think that was the perfect storm that gave us these Michelin stars, right? So why do I say that we're so good at like the internet? I think that we're just so good at going viral, I guess. Or at the very least, we really are able to show our power through it. Like when you watch like competitions where internet voting is a thing and it's like a global contest, like it's probably a Filipino who's going to dominate. I remember when I was young, Miss Universe did Miss Photogenic through internet voting. And the Philippines, I think, won maybe 3 times in a row. Like, we just kept winning it because the Filipinos really will go online and vote. And then for a more recent example, like the group Cat's Eye, right? They were formed through this like idol competition and they had to vote. And because it was internet voting, I think Sophia was consistently number 1 in the rankings, right? Now, I'm not saying that that was all that Sophia got because clearly Sophia deserved to be voted for because she is a very talented Filipino woman. And that just goes to show you how to this day we're so good at like utilizing, online culture as our currency. Yon. So it is really exciting. Honestly, personally, I don't care about the Michelin thing because I'm not that cultured. I will eat at a restaurant where I feel like the food is good regardless, but it is kind of, I guess, street cred, right? So when I go and travel, sometimes I was just in Taiwan recently and you see some of these stalls have like part of the Michelin, they would label their stalls with like the Michelin thing. And I was always wondering why we don't have that in the Philippines. And now we do. I don't want to talk about it too much, but clearly, aside from the fact that Jollibee is dominating the world, they're so good at social media. Like Jollibee from all, like Jollibee UK, Jollibee in the US, Jollibee in the Philippines. They're so good at the internet. Like every single post turns into a meme. So the only Filipino restaurant that got 2 Michelin stars is called Helm by Josh Boutwood. And when I checked Google, the price is 2,000 to 2,500 pesos. No way. I mean, unless you guys want me to eat there, I might. But 2,000 to 2,500 price range, girl. I mean, congratulations, Helm. If you have like coupons, promos, let me know. But I'm sure it's great. I mean, I looked at the menu and it was really, really interesting. They have like Wagyu beef with Japanese wasabi, which is not Filipino. Oh, nga, where are the Filipino things in the menu? Filipino British din yung may-ari. Alam mo, let's just make this a very celebratory Confabulous. So I'm not gonna get into that, but congratulations to everyone who got stars. I will probably give Morning Sun Eatery a try because I've heard of it now before. A very long time ago, I've heard of that eatery because I'm a QC girly. I'm originally a QC girly. I've always heard of Morning Sun Eatery. Never been able to eat there. So, also, budget ko yon. Mas budget ko yung Morning Sun Eatery. Okay, enough of food because it's making me hungry. Let us now move on to film. Specifically, an animated film because I heard through the grapevine. Actually, no, I just, keep seeing it on TikTok and then I saw it on news websites. DreamWorks has finally announced the cast for their allegedly Filipino-inspired movie Forgotten Island. And the cast is a lot of Filipinos. I think it was Lea Salonga, Manny Jacinto, Liza Soberano, H.E.R, and then you have people like Dave Franco, Jenny Slate, and very exciting because I remember I was already super excited. Just as a Filipino, and I love those like animated movies, right? And I remember Raya, The Last Dragon, and it's just a Filipino. I was really excited because I know that was like inspired by like Southeast Asian stuff. And I know that there wasn't anything specific. And so now what has been said was Forgotten Island was heavily inspired by Filipino because the island is named Nakali, which a TikToker, I don't know if this is their research or if this is just their take on it, but they say it's probably inspired by the Tagalog word nakalimutan, which is forgotten. And maybe, because like when I heard Nakali, I was like, oh, maybe it's Sakali, which in Sakali is the Tagalog word for like, if by some reason, by chance, but I guess he's a little more accurate. Nakali. But like, the thing is, nakalimutan, the root word is limot, because limot is to forget. So I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it is cute. It's a cute island name. But yes, back to the movie. It's so interesting because the story is, let me read the actual like synopsis. Forgotten Island centers on lifelong best friends Joe, played by H.E.R, and Riza, played by Liza Soberano, who find themselves stuck on the magical and forgotten island of Nakali. The only way home will potentially require the loss of their cherished memories together. Grabe, no? That's kind of intense, very heavy, but like, animated movies nowadays are like that. They don't only tug at your heartstrings, they also like really make you feel things that sometimes you don't want to feel, but it's okay. That's why I'm really, really excited. I also hope that maybe this could be like, maybe at the very least, a low-key musical. I'm expecting maybe Tagalog or at least Tagalog aligned songs in the movie. Since Lea Salonga is part of the cast, make her sing in Tagalog, please. Please, I'm begging you. But if it's inspired by the Philippines, I think it would be such a lost opportunity if it is not heavily adorned with great music. I just think they're gonna be missing out. And I also hope that it's really not just like the setting that's Filipino. I hope that there are certain values and elements of our culture that are also explored in the movie, because it would be so easy. I've seen this time and again, not just with animated films, but a lot of media where they would explore a certain place or a certain culture, but it's very simplistic. And I hope that they're able to actually showcase Filipino culture and Filipino values through this movie, because this is a big step. This really is a big step. And we've been talking about here on this channel how the Filipino content all over the world is growing leaps and bounds, and this is part of that. But what I also expect for this movie to do is to kind of start this movement of, curiosity and affinity to Filipino things. Like, how there are people who are obsessed with Japanese culture, or the idea of Japan. And I think that sometimes that starts because they watch movies or they see TV shows or they read books. And then the whole Hallyu wave of Korean stuff where there are people who just love Korea. I hope that that kind of happens for the Philippines as well, where it's kind of a real niche or a subculture of people really interested in our country and our culture, of course, in good ways. Okay. But yeah, I hope that it goes that direction. My biggest hope for this movie is for it to maybe take on the spirit of the success of K-pop Demon Hunters, where, it's going to have like one iconic banger amongst other really good songs in the movie, and that everybody sings it. That'd be really cool for it to have that kind of moment where it's not just big because Filipinos supported it, but because it really had a great impact on every person who watched it. From an animated film, let's move on to another film, but this time it's not animated. It's actually really, really old because, and I just found this out today. So a copy of the 1936 Filipino film called Diwata ng Karagatan was found in Belgium. And why is this important? Because this was considered like a missing movie. Like, it's lost media. And I think some people just gave up hope and thought that we were never going to find it, because the considered father of Philippine movies is a man named José Nepomuceno. And I don't think we have any of his movies. Like, no one has any copies of these movies except this one that we found recently. Now, who found it? Film historian Nick de Ocampo, through the help of Luis Baterna, the daughter of a pioneering Ilonggo language film director. So they went to Brussels to check if that is the film. And it is indeed a copy of Diwata ng Karagatan. So if you're not a Tagalog speaker, that means, I guess, a fairy of the sea. And I feel like how serendipitous for this to happen during a time when I feel like we're getting into a golden age of Philippine cinema. There have been many golden ages of Philippine cinema, but I think we're living in one right now. It's very exciting. We've talked about this before. Magellan, a Love Diaz directed film, is getting a lot of Oscar buzz. So hopefully we manifest it into reality. But there's so many films from the Philippines, made in the Philippines by Filipino directors with an all-Filipino cast as well, that have been getting international recognition. So for this movie to be found by Nick de Ocampo in Brussels is very important. Because unfortunately in the Philippines, I think archiving is not the best. It's not the best. So I think it's very powerful to find something to represent a time in the Philippines, because let me get my information correct. It actually dethrones Zamboanga. So Zamboanga is a movie starring Fernando Poe Sr. and it was produced in 1937, which is considered the oldest surviving pre-World War II Filipino film. But now that we've found Diwata ng Karagatan, it is now the oldest pre-World War II Filipino film. Isn't that fabulous? So I did mention that like archiving in the Philippines is very hard. I mean, we've been colonized so many times. So I know that it's hard. Because I was wondering like what took so long or why it was so hard for them to like pin this copy down or whatever. And according to the article and according to Nick de Ocampo, someone tampered with it. So what it said was that a French distributor re-edited and falsely claimed it as a French production, cutting it down to 52 minutes and erasing Filipino credits and adding a French narration. Sabi pa nga ni Nick de Ocampo dun sa post niya sa Facebook, he was like, it was kind of sad because you saw this like black bar where you were supposed to see like credits. It was covered up with like these a black screen or black bars. And I was like, wow, they really, erasing Asian and specifically Filipino narratives, really. And that's probably why I think that this is definitely not the only film that has happened to. So I feel like we really should have more discoveries, but it's really hard to confirm. It's really hard to pin them down because I'm sure that there is this erasure. So this makes me wonder, and I hope that this is something that you could think about too, is what if that never happened? Would we have a Filipino wave earlier? Like maybe we should, maybe we could have had it in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know. Maybe it could have been earlier if there was not this active push to erase, I will say, non-white narratives, because I'm pretty sure it's not just happening to like Filipino movies. I'm sure it's happening to Asian movies, African movies, a lot of content, because like history really has taught us that our stories are constantly getting erased. So that really does make me wonder. But regardless, what a great moment. I want to be able to see it. So hopefully they're working on something to somehow restore it, or to at least have a screening of it here in the Philippines for us Filipinos to be able to enjoy the film. Because I'm really, really curious. I'm so fascinated by old cinema, and I would go. I really would go. Hopefully, Mr. Nick De Ocampo is able to bring that movie home. So I've been seeing these clips of parties. So at first I didn't even know if these were like Filipino people, but I just saw people partying and I was like, oh wow, what a fun party. And then they would zoom out and I'm like, this looks like a grocery store. Why are people like getting down at the grocery store? And I realized it was Seafood City. I didn't know. I'm not from America, girls. I don't know what Seafood City is. So, and apparently it's this Filipino-owned chain of supermarkets. And somehow, recently, it has become the party hub for Filipino Americans, which is kind of crazy. If you see the videos, they are like, it's a club. They have turned the supermarket as like this nightlife event. I do think that because I read an article recently where Gen Zs aren't going out. Like Gen Zs are a generation where they just don't go out as much as like the millennials or like the Gen Xs do, which is kind of true. I don't know. But I feel like this is maybe at least what Filipino Gen Z people like to do. It's just kind of wild that it's happening in a place where you usually try to get food. They have DJs, there's live music. It's insane. It's a real party. And it's a very interesting development, especially with the political climate in the US right now. But I feel like maybe it does make sense just because, I feel like you would feel a lot, if you're Filipino in America, for example, I feel like you would feel a lot safer in a place like Seafood City. And so if there's an opportunity to also be able to like go out and party there, then you would take it, right? But at the same time, I just think it's a great example of the spirit of community in the Philippines. We bring it everywhere we go. And so it's not really this surprising, Anyway, I do think that this whole Seafood City thing is part of the wave of Filipino pop culture. And I think that a lot of it is external, like Filipinos showing themselves off to the world. But I think I'm trying to get into the head of a Filipino American. And I think that this is also a way to connect to the wave that is happening, that is representing the Philippines, because it is hard. I think when you're Filipino American, and I can't speak for them, I'm not Fil-Am, but it is hard to embrace your Filipino identity while living in a country that's definitely not the same as the Philippines, and also in a country that right now I think isn't very nice to immigrants. So I do think this is their way of connecting to being Filipino, but also a small way of resistance to what is happening politically there. But it's really cute. I do love seeing Filipinos having the time of their life. And again, it's just so funny that it's in the middle of a supermarket. What nice things to talk about our country. But now let's move on to Fab Finds. Again, Fab Finds is where I share something Filipino to all of you so that you guys can discover it for yourselves. And this one, maybe you probably already know about it just because it's been popular online for a while. But I just played it recently and I've seen people play it already, but just getting to play it myself is so funny. It's called Hapunan. It is this thriller Filipino made video game. And it's I love it because its quality isn't great in terms of how the graphics are and the aesthetic, but it is very specific and there's a charm to it looking like that. It is very, very interesting. And I do think that's why it went viral, because not only Filipinos played it, like a lot of people all over the world, famous streamers played it because it's so charming in the way it's trying to like scare you and lead you on. So if you guys haven't yet checked out the game Hapunan, which is the Tagalog word for dinner, check it out. My favorite part is when you have to sell balut, because it's a very strange part of the game. But yeah, check it out. I think it's really part of this wave of indie Filipino games that are getting famous all over the world. People have been saying it's very emotional, and there's so much more. So that's something if you guys like gaming like I do, check out Hapunan and all the other indie Filipino games. And that is it for my Fab Find this week. And that is it for this episode of Confabulous. Short and sweet. So overall, we are at a point in time where the Philippines is, I guess, getting its moment in the sun. We've talked about this in the first Confabulous episode, but I think it's ongoing. I do think that there is a lot of work to be done for the Philippines and, our stuff to be like on a level that's really powerful up there. But we are at the beginning of it. And I really did not think I would live to see this day, but we are here. And it's great because it's not just music now. It's not just movies. It's not just TV shows. It's all over. Now we have food, video games, supermarkets. And if you guys have anything to add that you think is part of this wave, let us know in the comments. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me yap in this episode on Confabulous. And of course, if you guys don't want to miss our episodes, like and then subscribe to Sisne Pop. Do not forget to turn on your notifications so that you are, informed when we have a new video out. And do not forget to follow me on my socials at Hoy Ramona on Instagram. Follow me there. But right now, I gotta go. So I'll see you all on the next Confabulous. My name is Momo. See you next time. Toodles.